Bud. Hey, buddy. Yummy huckleberry. Hey, there you go. So, I'm out here in the woods, the beautiful woods, with my dogs, just enjoying a natural environment, enjoying the silence, enjoying my thoughts. So I'm kicking open the door to this Cormac Macarthy rebel renegade society, and don't worry, I didn't show up with nothing. I got something very special for you. Actually, I'll give you a little preview. It's a story about Glanton and his gang that I'm sure none of you have ever heard. Well, I'm not sure none of you have ever heard it, but I'm gonna share some of my findings with you about what I discovered about the Glanton gang. So, first I gotta tell you about my chronological experience with Macarthy's novels as I read them. I was, I believe, a sophomore in high school, and the English teacher, probably the only teacher I can even remember, seeing how I wasn't exactly a scholarly youth. So he had us read All the Pretty Horses for a semester. Pretty much read the whole book in class. We could read it at home if we wanted and read ahead, but he actually wanted us to read every book in class with him, or every page in class with him. And during that process, he spelled out Macarthy's entire whatever you call it, his entire way of writing and his entire art style. He just spelled it out to us as we went. He got a map of the border, and he charted their adventure, and he explained how close to reality Cormac Macarthy tries to make his writing by trying to live out as best he can the same paths that his characters do. And that was pretty interesting to me. You know, he just broke down every little metaphor, every little mythical West thing that's alluded to in All the Pretty Horses, since it's like a love letter to the Old West. And anyway, the way Mr. Murray talked about Cormac Macarthy was just like, I didn't know. Well, I was like 15, and so I didn't know that a grown man could kind of be fanboying out over something the way I would fanboy out over artists I like, musicians that I liked. And so just the way that my teacher was so about Cormac Macarthy made me pretty interested just on that alone right there. But I mean, I too, Ian, grew up in a desert. Different desert than you, much higher, much colder. Utah. And it's a very, very old-timey, low population existence that I came from. And I don't really I'm not on like a name-to-name basis with all y'all, but I will just tell you that I was named out after a John Wayne character. So I have a close, real, true connection with what Macarthy writes about, I feel. So I was able to really understand where my teacher was coming from, and he was directing me, down the Macarthy path. And it was like a magnetic situation. Like, I just never was too into reading. I mean, I was into reading a little bit. I read some books, like some Hunter Thompson and some other nonfiction, and I thought that nonfiction was where it's at, because I thought I didn't care about anything, any story that never happened. But yeah, once that teacher broke down Cormac Macarthy to me, and we read All the Pretty Horses, it definitely changed that. It didn't really make me read a whole bunch of fiction novels, it just made me read all of Cormac McCarthy's novels. Like, yeah, I'm not a literary bookworm, I'm just not. I do like cool shit though. So, from time to time, I will read something other than a Cormac McCarthy novel. But, so, yeah, that was my first experience, All the Pretty Horses. Reading it, man, I was like, I was a really morbid teenager. I was one of those teenagers that looked up snuff films on the internet and, you know, watched fucked up movies, loved them as many as I could watch. Didn't really like to read anything unless it was at least violent, you know. At least a little bit violent, at least. So I come to All the Pretty Horses, and by and large not a violent book, but the way Cormac McCarthy writes, he writes with such a realism that you can feel the danger on every page, possible danger on every page. And in that book, when it finally does get to the action and to the violence, the way he wrote it, it was like he lived it to me, man. It was, I don't know how he can encapsulate that. The way I would describe Cormac McCarthy's writing is, and I kind of noticed this when it came to the action scenes and the death scenes and whatnot, injuries. When a murder happened and somebody is coming forward and they're snitching, and in court the lawyer or whoever will say, oh, they knew so many details about this crime, they knew all the information they had was only things you could have known if you were there during the crime or the murder. And that's how Cormac McCarthy writes. Every line is a line spoken as if he were there and had lived it. I don't know if I conveyed that well enough. I might try it again in a different video. But it's a very, very real depiction of the situations. And when you're done reading it, you felt like you lived it, or you at least knew somebody very closely who lived it. That's why so many people love John Grady Cole, because he's just written so close to home that you just never fucking forget him. So, like I say, I was a morbid, violence-fixated teenager. You know, a lot of people said I had the school shooter swag. Looking back, I didn't have the school shooter swag, you know. Wasn't a school shooter or had the desire to do a school shooting, but I did wear a green trench coat. So, be that as it may, wasn't exactly a little killer or anything, but that was definitely a strong draw point for me to McCarthy's work, because the big question in class was, which McCarthy book are you going to read next? And the teacher went around class, got to know everybody, figured out which book to recommend to them to read after All the Pretty Horses if they liked it, you know. And for me, of course, it was Blood Meridian. Cue the next segments. Okay, finally, fucking finally, excuse me, dog, finally we're talking about Blood Meridian. That is what we were all here for. Absolutely. It's why I get up in the morning. Just to smell them scalps cooking.